Let's have some fun. I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. Like and subscribe. Or don't. Leave a mean comment. If you are a sovereign citizen, please just leave a mean comment. I'm very curious what you come up with. Be very curious to hear any opinions of any sovereign citizens who happen to listen to my channel. Would love it. Let's start with some basic definitions, because sovereign citizen is something we've heard of. You see it on TikTok, and I'm done seeing it. I don't want to see it anymore. So let's start with some basic definitions. I'm using the Wikipedia page for sovereign citizens, so we know this is going to be slightly anti-sovereign citizen as I read it. I'm going to read it. I'm going to try and give my best, most fair take on it once I've read it. The sovereign citizen movement is a loose group of anti-government activists, conspiracy theorists, vexatious litigants, tax protesters, and financial scammers found mainly in English-speaking common law countries. Sovereign citizens have their own pseudo-legal belief system based on misinterpretations of common law and claim not to be subject to any government statutes unless they consent to them. Okay, so I'm going to bring my law degree to bear here. There's a couple things we need to know about the United States. First and foremost, if you are a citizen of the United States, you are subject to U.S. law. If you are within the borders of the United States, you are subject to U.S. law. If you at any moment are on a U.S. territory abroad, you are subject to United States law. The United States is one country. Now, the means of governance inside the United States is through the states, is through the federal government and through the states. But it is a united system. Now, second, there are two types of law in the United States and in what we might call a system that developed out of the English law system. There is statutory law and there is common law. Statutory law is law created by the representatives that you voted for. They write it down, the executive branch signs it into law. The statute is a law. The statute by itself is a law. Common law is what happens in court when judges interpret said statutes. They create something called common law. Common law is simply binding pieces of law that come out of the court system rather than out of the legislation. Now, common law is not meant to be understood as a statute because judges cannot create statutory law. However, the judge's role is to interpret the law, and when they make interpretations, oftentimes that creates law, and that means that that is common law. More activist judges will get loose and fun with their interpretations of statutes, and less activist judges will stick to the plain language or try to stick to the plain language. I'll give you a good example. Fourth Amendment is the right against unreasonable searches and seizures to your person. Now that in and of itself embraces some principles of common law inside of it, but let's just stick to the fact that the Fourth Amendment is something that was written down at some point. The right to privacy was something created by, I believe, the Supreme Court, Commonwealth versus Massachusetts. That was a piece of common law created by a joint interpretation of the Fourth, Fifth, possibly the Sixth Amendment. I'm going back into my con law days, and it's fuzzy. But at least the Fourth and Fifth Amendments, the right to privacy being you have a right to privacy in areas where privacy is expected. In public spaces, you have no right to privacy, but in your home, you do have an expectation of privacy, meaning you have an expectation that nobody's filming you, unless you choose to be filmed by, say, putting a camera in your kitchen. That's a bit of common law. What sovereign citizens do, what these dumbos do, these lovely dumbos, based on these misinterpretations of common law, they claim not to be subject to any government statute unless they consent to them. Dumbos. Newsflash. You voted, or you had the right to vote. You consented to the statute. Now, we see this most often when, especially in these TikTok videos, we see this most often when sovereign citizens get pulled over by the police for relatively minor infractions like speeding or running a stop sign or frankly just being parked where they're not supposed to be parked, where they're blocking a driveway or something. These are all traffic violations. These are statutory, meaning when the police pull you over, they flash the lights, they pull you over. At that point, it is a traffic stop. You're being detained, and it's an investigation. They have the right to ask for your ID. If you are driving on the roads is a privilege. It is not a right. When you're walking on the sidewalk, that's different. Police need a reasonable, articulable suspicion that a crime has been committed, and even that's a very low threshold. That's like somebody in blue jeans committed a crime here at some point. We haven't caught him yet, and you're wearing blue jeans. On the roads, however, you're subject to a different set of rules. Because driving is a privilege and not a right, the police have more leeway to pull you over. When they pull you over, they have the right to ask for your ID. They have the right to ask for your registration. They have the right to ask for your insurance. Excuse me. While they don't have the right to search your vehicle without your consent or without a warrant, that also is different on the road. Sovereign citizens will say, no, 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 no. I'm not driving. I'm traveling. Because in the Constitution, I have a right to travel. The right to travel in the Constitution simply means you have the right to travel between the states. That's it. No state can bar you just because they hate people from Massachusetts. If you're going to New York and you're from Boston, people in New York can't just say, no, we hate Bostonians, you can't come here. It's not a thing. However, the police can say, you have 19 points on your license. You've lost the right to privilege of the right to drive. You can find another way to exercise your right to travel. Sovereign citizens, especially in these TikTok videos, they find that they find that they have the right to, they call it, they say, I'm not driving, I'm traveling. They operate a motor vehicle to do so. And then they say, no, I'm not the person my expired license says I am. I am so-and-so representing the corporate person that is blah, 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 blah. You see where we're starting to get complicated here? They make up this whole set of rules and laws based on, they're like law students who fell asleep in class, somehow passed the bar, and are now just making crap up as they go. It's nonsense, absolute nonsense, these videos. Frankly, I'm addicted to them because it's hysterical watching them try to bend and weave their way out of everything. I don't know who these lawyers are who keep giving them legal paperwork and saying, here's the paperwork that you need to give the police when they pull you over. And then they say, I need to talk to your supervisor, as though the supervising cop is going to say, oh yes, quite right, your argument makes perfect sense. Ladies and gentlemen, when you get pulled over on the side of the road, there's a couple of things you need to know. Number one, the police have a lot of discretion. They can pull you over for a lot of different things. There's a lot of different statutes that govern driving on the road. For example, if your tints on your windows are too dark, or if the tints on your windows are such that the police thought they were too dark, they can pull you over at that point. Now, they can't toss you out of the vehicle and beat you to crap in the side of the road and do all that stuff. But at the point at which they pull you over and they ask you for your license, registration, and proof of insurance, they've given you a legal command. It's not a request. Sovereign citizens don't think they're subject to such requests because they don't think they're subject to the statutes of whatever state they happen to be around. They also make this ridiculous argument that, the states are not state governments. The states are corporations. They're not. That's not a thing. It's not a thing. State governments are not corporations. They may function similarly to corporations in some cases, but they're not corporations. They're the state governments duly elected by the people to represent them at the governmental level. Look, folks, when it comes to traffic stops, former lawyer to the people, generally speaking, a cop pulls you over, just give him your license, proof of insurance, and registration. And if you don't have your license on you, your proof of insurance or registration, don't try to hide that fact because it's gonna come out eventually. Just be polite always at a traffic stop and just be honest about what you do or don't have with you, on you, whatever. Don't admit to having something in the car that you shouldn't have to admit to. Like, don't admit to having drugs in the car if there are drugs in the car. But if you don't have your license or proof of insurance, just say so. All right? People forget stuff. They forget to put stuff in the car sometimes, and cops are human beings. They'll probably understand, and they'll probably give you a ticket and let you go, because they have to. Like, they'll give you, like, this nonsense about just like fighting for your rights on the streets is ridiculous, because that's not where you fight. Once you have the ticket, you have a court date. Go to the court and fight. That's the forum. That's the forum for you to make your argument. Even if you make your argument, the cop has no discretion. He's got just a hair's breadth of leeway. But if you're going 95 miles an hour down to 30, he might be able to not give you a criminal ticket, but he's going to give you a ticket. He's not going to let you off with a warning because you dazzled him with this argument about how you are a sovereign citizen. You're not. You're not. My sovereign citizen friends, please stop making these arguments for your own health and safety, and frankly, for your own mental well-being, because you're driving yourself crazy. You're driving yourself crazy. You're driving me crazy. And just stop it. You're wasting oxygen, and you're wasting. I hope all these videos are fake. Frankly, I hope to God all these videos are fake. The real problem with the sovereign citizen movement is what it leads to in its most extreme form. And because I'm out of time, I'll get to that on the next episode. Until then, like and subscribe if you liked me ranting and rambling about sovereign citizens. If you're a sovereign citizen, leave a comment. I'm so curious what you come up with.